Once, there was a young shepherd boy who was tasked with watching over a flock of sheep. Day after day, he sat on a hillside, watching the sheep graze. He grew bored with the routine and thought it would be fun to play a trick on the villagers. One day, the boy ran down the hill, shouting, "Wolf! Wolf! A wolf is attacking the sheep!" Hearing his cries, the villagers rushed up the hill to help. But when they arrived, they found no wolf. The boy laughed, enjoying how he had fooled them. A few days later, the boy played the same trick again. He cried, "Wolf! Wolf!" Once again, the villagers hurried to help, only to find that there was no wolf. The boy laughed even harder this time. Soon after, a real wolf did come to the hillside and began attacking the sheep. The boy, terrified, shouted as loud as he could, "Wolf! Wolf! Please help! The wolf is attacking the sheep." But this time, the villagers didn't come. They thought he was playing another trick. The wolf destroyed the flock, and the boy was left regretting his actions. Moral: no one believes a liar, even when he tells the truth. Once upon a time, there was a hare who loved to boast about how fast he could run. He would often tease the tortoise, who was slow and steady, about his pace. Tired of the hare's arrogance, the tortoise challenged him to a race. The hare, confident of his victory, accepted the challenge with a smirk. On the day of the race, both animals started together. The hare quickly raced ahead, leaving the tortoise far behind. Confident that the tortoise would never catch up, the hare decided to take a nap under a tree. Meanwhile, the tortoise kept moving forward, slow but steady, without stopping. While the hare slept, the tortoise passed him and kept going. By the time the hare woke up and realized what had happened, it was too late. The tortoise had already reached the finish line and won the race. The hare was shocked and humbled by the tortoise's victory. He learned a valuable lesson that day. Moral: slow and steady wins the race. Consistency and determination are more important than speed and arrogance. Once upon a time, there was a king named Midas. He was extremely wealthy and loved gold more than anything. One day, he did a good deed for a god, and as a reward, the god offered to grant him one wish. Midas immediately wished that everything he touched would turn to gold. The god granted his wish, and Midas was overjoyed. He started touching everything around him, rocks, trees, and furniture, and they all turned into beautiful, shining gold. He was thrilled with his new power. However, when he sat down to eat, he picked up a piece of bread, and it turned into gold. He tried to drink water, but it too became gold. His joy quickly turned into despair as he realized he could not eat or drink. Worse still, when his beloved daughter came to hug him, she turned into a statue of gold. King Midas cried out in sorrow and begged the god to take away this terrible gift. The god, feeling pity for Midas, reversed the wish, and everything returned to normal. Midas learned a valuable lesson that day. Moral: greed for material wealth can lead to unintended consequences. True happiness cannot be found in riches alone. Once upon a time, in a forest, a mighty lion was sleeping. A small mouse ran across the lion's nose, waking him up. The lion grabbed the mouse in his paw, ready to eat him. Terrified, the mouse begged for mercy. "Please let me go," the mouse pleaded. "Someday I might help you in return." The lion laughed at the idea of a tiny mouse helping him, but decided to let the mouse go. "You are too small to be of any help to me," he said, releasing the mouse. A few days later, the lion was caught in a hunter's net. He roared and struggled, but the ropes were too strong. Hearing the lion's roar, the mouse rushed to the scene. He gnawed through the ropes and set the lion free. "You laughed at the idea of me helping you," said the mouse, "but today I have saved your life." The lion was grateful and realized that even the smallest creatures can be of great help. Moral: no act of kindness, no matter how small, is ever wasted. Everyone has value, and help can come from unexpected places. On the edge of a quiet village, there was a big, old tree. In that tree lived a family of birds. Among them was a small bird named Sky, who had never flown before. While her brothers and sisters soared high in the sky, Sky stayed in the nest, afraid of flying. One bright morning, the mother bird said, "It's time for you to learn to fly, Sky. You can't stay in the nest forever." Sky looked down from the tall tree. The ground seemed so far away, and she felt scared. "I'm not ready," Sky replied nervously. "What if I fall?" "You have to trust your wings," said the mother bird kindly. "Everyone is scared at first, but once you try, you'll feel the wind lift you up." Sky watched her brothers and sisters happily flying above the trees. She wanted to join them, but her fear held her back. Hours passed, and the sun began to set. Sky felt a soft breeze and heard the rustling leaves. Something inside her told her it was time. Taking a deep breath, Sky stepped to the edge of the nest. Her heart pounded, but she spread her wings, closed her eyes, and leapt. For a moment, she felt like she was falling. But then, just as her mother had said, the wind caught her wings, and she soared. Sky opened her eyes and realized she was flying. The village below looked small, and the wind felt cool against her feathers. Joy and freedom filled her heart. She flapped her wings and flew higher, circling the big tree. When Sky returned to the nest, her family cheered. "I did it!" Sky exclaimed, her fear gone. From that day on, Sky was no longer afraid. She flew with her brothers and sisters every day, exploring the sky with excitement. Sky had learned a valuable lesson. Sometimes, all you need is a little courage to take the first step, and the rest will follow. Once upon a time, in a small village, there lived a girl named Lily. She was curious and loved exploring nature. One day, while wandering through the woods near her home, she stumbled upon a rusty old gate hidden behind some bushes. Intrigued, Lily pushed the gate open and stepped inside. To her amazement, she discovered a beautiful garden filled with colorful flowers, tall trees, and chirping birds. The sunlight poured in, making the flowers sparkle like gems. It was a magical place that felt alive. As she walked further into the garden, Lily noticed a small pond with crystal clear water. She knelt down to look closer and saw tiny fish swimming happily. Suddenly, she heard a soft voice. "Hello there," said a small fairy with shimmering wings. She had bright blue hair and a gentle smile. "I'm Bella, the guardian of this garden. It's a secret place that few have found." Lily couldn't believe her eyes. "A fairy? This is incredible!" she exclaimed. Bella giggled and said, "You can visit whenever you like, but you must promise to keep this place a secret." Excitedly, Lily agreed. From that day on, she visited the garden every afternoon after school. Bella taught her about the different plants and animals, and they became great friends. They would dance under the trees, play games, and enjoy the beauty of nature together. One day, while exploring a new part of the garden, Lily found a small door at the base of an ancient tree. It was covered in vines and looked very old. "What's inside?" Lily asked, her heart racing with curiosity. Bella smiled mysteriously. "That door leads to a special place, but only those with a pure heart can enter." Determined to see what lay beyond the door, Lily placed her hand on it and whispered, "I want to explore." To her surprise, the door creaked open, revealing a tunnel filled with soft light. As she stepped inside, she found herself in a magical land with sparkling waterfalls and vibrant colors. There were friendly animals everywhere, and the air smelled sweet like candy. Lily was overjoyed. She spent the entire day exploring this new world, playing with the animals and discovering hidden treasures. When it was time to go home, she promised Bella she would return soon. Lily left the secret garden with a heart full of joy and adventure. She realized that sometimes, the best treasures are the friendships we make and the beauty we discover in the world around us. One quiet afternoon, Emma returned home from work to find a small brown package sitting on her doorstep. She wasn't expecting any deliveries, so the sight of the package confused her. There was no return address, and her name was written in unfamiliar handwriting. Curious, she brought the package inside, set it on the table, and stared at it. Who could have sent this? She wondered. After a moment of hesitation, she carefully opened it. Inside was a small, beautifully carved wooden box. It had intricate designs of flowers and leaves covering its surface, and a tiny key was tied to it with a thin red ribbon. Emma turned the box over in her hands, examining it. There was no note or explanation. She felt a strange mixture of excitement and caution. What could be inside? She inserted the key into the lock, her heart pounding with anticipation. As the box opened with a soft click, she peered inside. To her surprise, the box was empty, at least, it seemed empty at first. But when she tilted it towards the light, she noticed something small in the corner. It was an old photograph. The picture showed a young girl sitting on a swing in a park, laughing joyfully. The girl looked familiar, and after a moment, Emma realized with shock that the girl in the photo was her. But who could have this picture, and why send it now? Suddenly, her phone rang. She jumped, startled out of her thoughts. It was her older brother, Tom. "Hey, Emma. Did you get the package?" he asked cheerfully. "Tom? You sent this? What is this all about?" She replied, still confused. Tom laughed. "It's a little family treasure. I found that box while going through some old things at Grandma's house." "The photo? That's from when we used to go to the park every Sunday. Remember?" Emma's confusion faded, replaced by a warm sense of nostalgia. She smiled, thinking back to those carefree days at the park with her family. "I thought you'd like to have it," Tom continued. "A little reminder of the good old days." Emma held the box close, feeling grateful for the unexpected gift. It wasn't just a box, it was a memory, a connection to her past. One rainy afternoon, Sarah was walking home from the grocery store. Her umbrella barely kept her dry as the rain poured down in heavy sheets. She hurried through the streets, eager to get home and out of the storm. As she turned the corner onto her street, she noticed something unusual, a small, shivering cat sitting under a parked car. The poor creature was soaked, and its fur was matted from the rain. Sarah's heart sank at the sight. She loved animals, but had never had a pet of her own. She paused for a moment, unsure of what to do. The cat looked up at her with big, pleading eyes, as if it knew she could help. Sarah hesitated. "I can't just leave it here," she thought. Without a second thought, Sarah bent down and carefully coaxed the cat out from under the car. It was hesitant at first, but soon realized she meant no harm. Gently, she picked the little cat up, cradling it in her arms. The cat was so light and cold that Sarah's heart broke a little more. She decided to bring it home, at least until the storm passed. At home, Sarah dried the cat off with a soft towel, gave it some food, and made a little bed out of a blanket. The cat purred softly, curling up in the blanket as if it had found the safest place in the world. Over the next few days, Sarah posted signs around the neighborhood, hoping to find the cat's owner. But no one came forward. Days turned into weeks, and the cat, which Sarah had started calling Lucky, quickly became a part of her life. Lucky followed her everywhere, slept by her side, and greeted her at the door every evening when she came home. One evening, as Sarah sat on the couch with Lucky curled up next to her, she realized something. She hadn't just rescued the cat that rainy day, the cat had rescued her, too. In caring for Lucky, Sarah had found companionship and a new sense of purpose. Tom was always in a rush. Whether it was for work, meetings, or even grabbing a cup of coffee, he never seemed to have enough time. One Friday afternoon, as Tom hurried home after a long week, he realized something alarming. His apartment key was missing. Panic set in. He emptied his pockets, rummaged through his bag, and retraced his steps in his mind. Nothing. The key was gone. Tom stood outside his apartment door, frustrated. He had an important meeting the next day, and his spare key was with his friend Jake, who lived across town. With no other option, He decided to make the trip to Jake's place. It was a long journey, and as Tom rode the bus, he reflected on his hectic life. Always running from one place to another, never stopping to enjoy a moment. Maybe losing the key was a sign that he needed to slow down. When he arrived at Jake's apartment, Jake was surprised to see him. "Tom. What are you doing here?" "I lost my key," Tom explained, feeling embarrassed. "I need the spare." Jake smiled and invited Tom inside. "I have the key, but before you leave, stay for a while." "You're always so busy, we never hang out anymore." Reluctantly, Tom agreed. They sat on the couch, catching up on life. Jake poured them both a cup of tea, and for the first time in a long time, Tom felt relaxed. They talked about old times, laughed about silly things, and shared stories about their busy lives. Hours passed, and Tom realized how much he missed moments like these. The simple act of sitting down and talking with a friend reminded him of the things that truly mattered. Before he left, Jake handed him the spare key. "Take it easy, Tom," he said with a grin. "Not everything has to be done in a hurry." Tom smiled back. "You're right. I think I needed this more than I realized." As Tom made his way back home, he felt a sense of calm wash over him. Maybe losing the key wasn't such a bad thing after all. It was a reminder that life wasn't just about rushing from one task to another, it was about slowing down and appreciating the people and moments that make life meaningful. Every morning, Emma would take a walk in the park near her home. She enjoyed the peace and quiet before the city woke up. The park was her little escape, a place where she could clear her mind and watch the sunrise. One day, as she walked down her usual path, she noticed an elderly man sitting on a wooden bench. He was there every morning, always dressed neatly in a coat and scarf, even when the weather was warm. He sat quietly, staring out at the pond with a gentle smile on his face. Curious, Emma began to sit on the bench across from him every morning. They exchanged polite smiles, but never spoke. Days turned into weeks, and soon their routine became familiar. Emma wondered about the old man's life, why he was always there, and what brought him such calm. One particularly cold morning, Emma arrived to find the man already sitting on the bench, holding a small, worn-out photograph in his hands. She hesitated, then decided to ask. "Good morning," she said, sitting down on the bench next to him. "I always see you here. May I ask who's in the photograph?" The old man turned to her, his eyes kind but filled with memories. "This is my wife," he said softly, holding the picture up for her to see. It was an old black and white photo of a young woman, her smile radiant and full of life. "We used to come here every morning," he continued, his voice gentle. "She loved the park, loved watching the sunrise. We promised each other we'd come here as long as we could, to watch the sun come up together. Even after she passed, I couldn't break the habit." Emma felt her heart ache for him, yet she admired his dedication. "That's beautiful," she said softly. "You're honoring her every day." The old man smiled, looking out at the pond. "Love never truly fades," he said quietly. "It stays with you, even when the person is gone. This place keeps her close." From that day on, Emma continued her walks, but now she would stop and sit with the man. They talked about life, love, and everything in between. He shared stories of his wife, the way she laughed, the way she could brighten up any room. Emma realized that love didn't have to be grand gestures or big moments. Sometimes, love was simply being there, holding on to memories, and keeping promises. As the months passed, their quiet friendship grew, and Emma felt as if she knew the man's wife through his stories. The park bench became more than just a seat, it was a place where love, even in its quietest form, was always present. Sophia was rushing through the busy city streets, trying to make it to her job interview on time. She was nervous and kept checking her phone for directions. The tall buildings around her made it hard to get her bearings, but she finally spotted the office building in the distance. As she approached the entrance, a sudden gust of wind blew, and something slipped from her bag. It was her wallet. Without noticing, she hurried inside, thinking only about making a good impression at the interview. A few minutes later, Lucas, a young man walking by, noticed the wallet on the ground. He picked it up and looked around to see if anyone had dropped it, but the street was crowded, and no one seemed to be looking for it. Lucas opened the wallet, hoping to find some contact information. Inside, he found Sophia's ID, credit cards, and some cash, but no phone number. Lucas decided to wait near the office building, hoping the owner would come back looking for it. He stood by the door, watching people come and go, but after 10 minutes, there was still no sign of anyone searching for a wallet. He felt a bit unsure about what to do, but he knew he had to try to return it. Inside, Sophia was sitting nervously in the waiting room, her heart racing before the interview. She reached for her wallet to double-check her papers, but her heart sank when she realized it was gone. Panic washed over her as she tried to remember where she might have lost it. She was about to leave the building to search for it when her name was called for the interview. Sophia took a deep breath, pushed her worries aside, and went in for the interview. She answered the questions confidently, but in the back of her mind, she was still thinking about her wallet. After the interview, she rushed outside, frantically looking around for any sign of it. To her surprise, Lucas was still standing there, holding the wallet. "Excuse me," Sophia said, running up to him. "Did you find a wallet?" Lucas smiled and handed it to her. "I did. I've been waiting here, hoping someone would come for it." Sophia's face lit up with relief and gratitude. "Thank you so much. I didn't even realize I dropped it." "No problem," Lucas said. "I'm just glad I could help." With her wallet back in her hands, Sophia felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She thanked Lucas again before heading home, feeling lucky that someone honest had found her wallet. One evening, John was relaxing in his living room, reading a book. Suddenly, he heard a loud crash from outside. Curious, he got up and looked out the window. His neighbor, Mrs. Wilson, was struggling to lift a fallen tree branch that had landed in her yard during a storm. John quickly put on his shoes and went outside to help her. "Do you need a hand?" he asked. Mrs. Wilson, who was in her 70s, smiled gratefully. "Oh, John. Thank you. I was just trying to move this branch, but it's heavier than I thought." Without hesitation, John grabbed the branch and, with a little effort, lifted it. He carefully moved it to the side of her yard, away from the walkway. Mrs. Wilson watched him, visibly relieved. "That storm was stronger than I expected," she said. "I didn't even hear this branch fall until just now." John nodded. "It was pretty windy earlier. I'm glad you weren't outside when it happened." He looked at the rest of her yard, checking for more damage. "Everything else seems fine," he added. Mrs. Wilson smiled and offered him some lemonade. "You're always such a helpful neighbor, John." "Thank you again." John chuckled and waved it off. "No problem at all. That's what neighbors are for." As he walked back to his house, John felt good about helping out. It was just a small gesture, but he knew it made a big difference to Mrs. Wilson.